Nutrition and training genuinely can be complex from a biological point of view, but it shouldn't be for me and you as normal people trying to do things for ourselves. And the reason that it is because there's so much noise on the internet about different people giving their opinions on different things. I guess that's actually what I'm about to do right here, isn't it? Okay, any system in the real world is extremely complex in the sense that there are many dynamic, different things that are always happening at the same time. And people approach real systems, dynamic, complex systems like this, the kind of way a pure mathematician would, for example. Someone will try and learn everything there is to know about the entire human body. And this is not even how doctors function, and this is not how applied mathematicians function when they are looking at real systems, because the real world is far more complex than abstraction allows for. What I started to do was think like an applied mathematician. That means I'm modeling a real system, being the physical body, a very complex system that if you try to learn even one thing about it, if you try to just learn how the blood functions by itself, that is incredibly complex and takes a long time. But I simply reduced it to objectives and constraints. And that allows me to simplify it into practical frameworks. So I stripped everything down to first principles, but kept the practicality because I'm not trying to make some kind of objective claim about anything, whether a food is good or bad, whether rice is bad because our ancestors didn't fucking eat it according to the Flintstones, or whether eggs and cholesterol is bad because the vegan tells you that. Like you see the issue that occurs here when you think in one-liners, when you think in this thing is bad or that thing is bad because this person said so, and you don't have a coherent structure for everything, then you're going to get contradiction all of the time, and you're going to have too much information that you become paralyzed and don't do anything. The human body is literally just a biological system that has inputs that go into it and turns those inputs into different outputs, whether that be through digestion or physical mechanical movement or the use of the brain or vision or anything. It's very much exactly the same as something like a car, only far more complex. Now doing that, we forget of food in terms of labels, in terms of this is a good food, this is a bad food, this is a good form of training, this is a bad form of training. We stop thinking about it like that, and we start to think about it in terms of pure physics and mechanics. Take food as an example. What is food? Forget food as a label for a second. Let's just constrain it down to an object. All objects have energy. This is the very famous equation you've probably seen, even if you didn't understand it. E equals mc squared. What that means, as a really quick breakdown, is that energy and mass are essentially the same thing. And yeah, okay, I know it's rest mass, and yeah, I know something can have no mass and still have energy, whatever, shut up. That's not relevant to this discussion. But anyway, any object in theory that has some kind of mass has extractable energy to some extent. Even something you wouldn't consider food. What makes, I don't know, this mouse not food compared to the bread that you ate? And this is where it relates back to the energy extraction of the body. So there's this process that your body does. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called digestion. But essentially what digestion is your body's mechanism of extracting energy from an object. Forget food, remember, we're not using food as a label yet. Digestion is the mechanism that extracts that energy for repurposing that energy within the body. So whether that be cellular repair, whether that be cognition, whether that be moving blood, whatever it is. And just like any complex system, when you give it an input, there are various different things that always happen all of the time. So take digestion as the example we were just talking about. There are some foods that digest very well, i.e. the energy extraction process of that food is extremely efficient, and your body repurposes that fuel well for other things in the body. There are other things that, for example, may even have a net negative energy cost of digestion to useful energy ratio. So if I try to eat something like wood or grass, I'm not going to be able to. It's not considered food. We can categorize food properly as any sort of thing that is effectively enough digested by our body. And now that you have that minimalist view, that first principles view of how a system works, you are able to construct something like a diet or a training plan for yourself, because it always actually just comes down to two things in modeling. In applied mathematics, it always comes down to two things. There is some objective and there are constraints. And the point is that there is no objective way of doing this. There is no objective right or wrong, good food, good training plan, bad training plan. To do this, it is simply a matter of what is the actual objective and purpose that you're trying to achieve? What are the constraints that stop you from doing that? or that you have to take into consideration. If I wanted to literally gain as much mass as possible, for example, I could probably consider eating literally nothing but butter all day because it's extremely calorie dense. But for most of you, that's not going to be the objective. Most objectives will be some complex combination of different things. And the skill that the mathematician needs to have is to know how to simplify an objective enough and that it is practical to actually be carried out. So if the objective is something vague, for example, like I want to be the best biological version of myself that I can be, that's too vague to take action upon. Whereas if the objective was something clear and simple, like gain as much mass as possible, then something like eating nothing but fat would come up as a reasonable conclusion to that. And of course, objectives can be split into further sub-objectives that simplifies this. Anyway, at this point is when I will refer back to general knowledge or nutritional or training influences or something like this, because general knowledge is actually very useful in that case once it's put into the right context of what it actually is, rather than viewing it as a kind of worldview objective frame by which to look at something like nutrition. So carnivore diet, that it becomes very tribal, very almost like a religion. Instead, you look at it as general consensus of things that you can't practically carry out yourself, experiments that you can't practically carry out yourself. In theory, you could test everything yourself, but it's not practical to actually do that. You can utilize the collective knowledge that we've gained as a species for hundreds, thousands of years. For example, that rice is something categorized as something called a carbohydrate, and carbohydrates do this to your body when you eat them at this time, and etc., etc. So these are now just categories of facts that you can use in your larger framework for your objectives and constraints. This video isn't meant to be a kind of like full guide on nutrition or training. I haven't gone into massive detail about the specifics of different training plans or comparisons between different diets, etc., because that's not the purpose of this. But I am making this to share how I view a system like the body, a physical system, dynamic system, complex system, as well as where that point of view came from and how we can use that practically to do something like your own experiments or optimizations, for example. If you want to learn more about that in specific detail, I'm developing a full course specifically for that purpose, where I've translated some of my knowledge from studying formal mathematics into a metacognitive framework with modules ranging from maximizing cognition through nutrition, how to design and carry out your own experiments, and apply the meta skills of something like formal mathematics to your daily life. Anyone using the link in the description to join the newsletter there will get 50% off the course on launch and be notified when that happens. Subscribe to keep seeing more analysis like this, like and share this video so that the discourse grows and more people start talking about this. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching. I hope you have a nice day.